Welcome all to the Amateur's Guide to Shogi. And today we have the second game in the 2021 Oui Title Match between Sota Fujii, playing in this game on the white end, and Masayuki Toyoshima, playing the black. Masayuki Toyoshima is the challenger this year. Very top player. At this time, he also held the EO title. And he won the first game in this title match, giving him a 1-0 lead. And it is first to 4, or best of 7, however you want to describe it. Okay, so Sota Fujii needs to strike back. Now, this game was quite interesting. The beginning is not interesting at all. The beginning is symmetrical. But the end game is very interesting. One of those classic both players trying to kill each other before they get killed, with a massive king hunt by one of the players towards the end. So I hope you all enjoy. So we get a standard rook pawn opening. And I know I said it's symmetrical and it doesn't look symmetrical at the moment, but it is. You will see why, because Sota Fujii plays into the white Swanton lost bishop exchange. Named that because, well, one, it's a bishop exchange, but two, because white actually lost a move, as you'll notice, because this silver gets to develop twice into this position 10, defending against this pawn trade. So effectively, white lost a move then, but it's still a very popular opening at the top level, despite that lost tempo. And with this, Fujii also develops his silver. We get a few more developing moves. You get the sort of staircase of pawns, which we often see, allowing the silver to come here and then choose which path he wants to go to. Very, very common. And Fujii does the same. And here you can see it is completely symmetrical. And in fact, it's still completely symmetrical for the next few moves, with both players trying to make an edge attack. And both leaving their kings in the center as of yet. Although, as you can see, for those of you who know about castles and specifically Yagara Castle, both have created sort of a half Yagara Castle, just without the king in it. So, of course, if you push this pawn and then you got the gold to here, that would be I think it's technically called a gold Yagara, but it's just the most standard one, the Yagara. But at the top level, a fully formed Yagara castle these days is not particularly common. But yeah, they've both got it there. They've both got the option of castling into it. They just haven't yet. And you can see why, because both players are making a big edge attack, against the castle. So why would you want to voluntarily move your king into the line of fire, where all the action is happening? Instead, you could simply wait and keep the king away from the battlefield, and if their attack fizzles out and they start attacking on the other side of the board, then yeah, you can just run in and you've got a castle. So anyway, yeah, it's still symmetrical until this moment here, where Toyoshima pushes the pawn, sort of like completing this Yagara formation, but then Sota Fujii finally breaks the monotony and goes on the attack with a pawn exchange, getting his silver pushback. So now he can drop a pawn anywhere in this file. Whoops, I'm not very good with my arrows. Which obviously is a great asset to him, being able to drop pawns, basically right on the castle. Toyoshima and Fujii both bring their king over to the side a little bit. This, even, like, people say, like, don't leave your king on the home square and castle instead. But honestly, this sort of, hyper-modern professional strategy of just lifting your king up one square, for example, but not even castling. Like, if you're not going to castle, this is better than nothing, because it just, if you're back here, this square is so weak. It's so weak. Whereas when it's over here, it just protects the pawns in front of it, at the very least. It's very minimalist. For beginners and amateurs, I do not recommend doing this. Just castle. Just shut up and castle. But anyway, they both sort of move their kings to a little bit more safe positions. In this case, Toyoshima doesn't actually complete the Yagara and put the king in the normal square, instead choosing to keep the king over here, where it is still surrounded by 3 generals. It's still pretty safe, but it's a couple squares further away from this attack, which is actually incredibly important. A couple squares in shogi is a very big deal, and it can mean the difference between life and death in the endgame. Anyway, so Fujii and to make this pawn exchange, but Toyoshima this time ignores it and instead goes for a pawn exchange himself on this file. Once again, it's the same file but opposite, trying to break open this castle here. And Fujii now drops a bishop, obviously targeting this weak pawn with this pawn here, backing it up, which is blocked, but he can just take that. And then finally, Toyoshima gets a second pawn exchange and even a silver exchange before his rook is kicked out, and goes back to here. But then, of course, Fujii decides, no, I don't like it there, and he pushes it back even further. And then drops a dangling pawn, and then Toyoshima, of course, just goes, yeah, let's move the rook the third time and attack this weak silver here. Okay, but before that, at this move here, just for a bit of perspective on the times, after, or actually rather, when Fujii played this move here, Fujii at this point was down by 2 hours on the clock. I don't know if I said it in the beginning, but it is 8 hours each on the clock to begin with. And at this point in time, Sota Fujii had exactly 2 hours left. And after... Whoops. Didn't say that. Right. Sorry. And after this move, Toyoshima was on 4 hours and 6 minutes. So Toyoshima is, at this particular moment in time, 2 hours ahead of Fujii in terms of times, which is, once again, Fujii just seems to do this. He seems to use a lot of time, but it doesn't seem to hinder him. So, but it's just to keep you updated on what exactly is going on in this match. And here we go. So obviously Fujii doesn't sack a silver for no reason. Instead, choosing to move it back. This bishop is obviously defended. And so Toyoshima sort of pins this silver here to the rook and to the lance. So there is actually a tactic here. You could, if white does nothing, say they just move this lance or something, you can just take this. Because obviously if you take, you just take and you win material and you promote, and these are falling, so this is obviously very good for black. So Fujii can't allow that. So instead he moves the bishop back so that it cannot be taken. But of course this allows Toyoshima to attack the pinned piece. So now this silver is attacked, and you can't move the silver because this rook is hanging. Very common tactic is the pin. So of course Fujii can't do anything about that. He just instead attacks this rook with the knight, which is equal or higher danger. And Toyoshima moves it back, and this time Fujii attacks the bishop, which is a good way of getting out of this sort of pin. It is backed up, obviously, but of course Toyoshima can just move his bishop back and maintain this pin. Very annoying. And now Fujii goes on the attack, but of course you can keep attacking the pinned piece. So this silver is hanging. You can just take this, but then you would lose a rook. So Toyoshima is just trying to push and try and attack this pinned piece, which is causing a lot of contention in the center of the board. But of course, Fujii goes, you know what? I have a way out of this. Let me just go on a massive counterattack, sacking all my pieces. Yep, instant replay. He pushes the pawn, lets the silver be taken, pushes the pawn again and promotes, attacking the gold, lets his bishop be taken, takes the gold, checking the king, and has that be taken, and leaves this silver hanging. And also this rook hanging, so you need to do something about that. He doesn't move the rook immediately. He first gives this check, obviously, because this gives him room to bring the rook in behind, saving it from this bishop's line of sight, while also promoting it at the same time. Very dangerous. It's not quite a threat mate. This is not mate because you can still run. But it is still very dangerous, obviously, for Toyoshima's king. This king is kind of out of the open, and believe it or not, this king is arguably safer at this point, but this is most definitely not a safe position to be in either. and you will see Toyoshima make use of that in just a moment. Now, just before that, though, at, I believe, this moment here, Sota Fujii is now only down by about 40 minutes. So at this point in time, I think Fujii has 27 minutes on the clock, and Toyoshima has about an hour and 6 minutes on the clock. So the time gap has shrunk a little bit. Sorry, I just need to plug in my computer. Don't want it to die mid-recording. Okay. So, yes, brings in the dragon, and this is obviously very dangerous, but not quite a threat yet. So, Toyoshima goes on the offensive, seizing the initiative. That threatens this knight. The knight can't really go anywhere because you would be allowing some sort of drop here, and also you can just, like, take it, or take it. If it went, for example, say it went here, you could just clear off the pieces and then do some sort of drop like this, and it just looks very dangerous. I mean, probably not this exact sequence of moves, but you can understand that this is not exactly something that Fujii wants to walk into. So instead just leaves the knight back to here, and instead just takes this free silver. And when the knight is taken, just brings the silver back, sort of bolstering his defenses a little bit. And of course, maintaining protection of this square here. If he took with the, well, I mean, if he took with the gold, it would also be protected, but yeah, no, that was just my mistake. Whoops. Yeah, so this is just a little bit of a stronger castle than if he took forwards and kept the silver here. So Toyoshima finally moves his king out of the way. Early escape of the king is worth, I think there's two versions of the phrase, is worth 7 moves or worth 10 moves, I think are the two that I've heard. Basically, if you're in a position where, like in a dangerous position, good idea is to just run the king away before you start getting checked. And it's because, as I said in the very beginning of this game, a couple squares could be the difference between life and death. Like, for example, when I said before, like, he didn't put the king in the castle, imagine if the king was here. This attack would have been devastating. Not only because it probably would have just been like a mating attack, but also he would have had to get to like here and here, which are like the safe squares, he would have had to run an extra 2 squares. And that's, you know, very, very hard to do, and it's very dangerous. So, yeah, it was good that he kept his king sort of away from this attack, and now early escape of the king is trying to get away. The reason this is so effective is because in this attack, the only piece that is now able to cause any real damage is this dragon. So when the king was back here, this gold was able to like move across and keep checking and keep pressure up. But as it stands now, this gold can't really chase the king down because the king is as fast as the gold, so he'll just keep running. And over here, there's this dangling pawn, but which you'll see used later. But it's there's not a ton of attackers over here, so if he can run to safety, he's probably okay, at least at the moment. So Sota Fujii takes this lance. I mean, this gold, as I was saying, is not really getting into the attack anytime soon anyway, so yeah, he just takes the free lance. But critically, keep an eye on this lance. It's called foreshadowing. Keep an eye on it. Toyoshima goes in the attack, attacks this the weak castle, but of course this comes with the check, so that is a more forcing attack, but this is just obviously blocked. And Fujii now escapes his silver away, simultaneously attacking the knight, but you probably don't want to take this because you're just weakening your castle by doing that. So this pawn is dropped, and of course you don't want to take it with either piece because you would just lose it and weaken the castle, so instead he scoots the gold to the side, gets checked, and moves the king, believe it or not, back to his original square. So obviously this diagonal is very, very strong and very potentially dangerous for Sota Fujii, as you'll see here. So this is not quite a threat mate. But as you can see, lining up 2 bishops on the same diagonal towards the king's face is not exactly a nice position to be in. It's not a threat mate because if you promote here, you can just run at the moment. So Toyoshima just drops this silver, and now this obviously is a threat mate because this is just checkmate and 1, because the escape route is now covered by the silver. However, from the drop of this knight, this, believe it or not, is a mate. So this last silver drop of Toyoshima was a mistake. They did have low time, but this night drop from here is a threat mate, and you will see Sota Fujii doing that right now. Toyoshima resigns. This is just okay. This is insane. This is, I mean, what cool King Hun for starters. But just look at this. This is from the night drop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13. I believe it's this move here. Yep. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. A mate in 22, and at this point, you know, when he dropped this night, I think Fujii had a couple minutes max on the clock. But critically, remember when I said keep an eye on that lance? Out this lance, this is not a mate. And Fujii knew that and took the lance all the way back here. And in fact, as it says, it's the best move. Just the abilities of this man are utterly insane. His mating capabilities are beyond anything the shogi world has seen in a very long time, if ever. It's just stunning. It's just stunning, and this is where Toyoshima resigns. And Sota Fujii brings about an equalizer, 1-1, when his own king is on the verge of mate, and brings the 2021 Oui Title Match back to 1-1, and he is on his way to defending the title. So, I hope you all enjoyed this recap, and place your bets in the comments as to who is going to win. Anyone who watched the end of my last video or the end of my Kisei video, Game 3, of course would be cheating because you would already know the answer. But if you haven't seen those moments, then or you haven't been keeping up with what's been going on because this game is a little bit old, then yeah, sure, place your bets. And yeah, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time.